Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast, interview your ideal clients, and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm Dennis Carlson, founder of Agency Leverage and the host of the Hashtag Partnership series here on B2B Growth. We're talking with leaders in strategic partnerships, alliances, and channel development to find out what makes these relationships successful. Today, I'm excited to have Pete Espinosa on the show. Pete is the VP of Enterprise Sales and Alliances at Limelight Health. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to talk to you today because we've spent a little time just offline talking about partnering with consulting SI firms. And I know you're going to give us a little more information on what that means and what that looks like at Limelight. But Pete, if you wouldn't mind just quickly giving our listeners a little bit of background on who you are and what you do at Limelight, but also kind of where you came from in the industry.
Sure. I am at Limelight Health. As you said, I'm the head of enterprise sales and alliances. But prior to this, I had been head of global sales at a company called CSC prior to them becoming DXC. And before that, I spent 5 years as the head of global sales at Guidewire Software through kind of early stage up through the very successful IPO. And I'm a 20-year retired IBM executive where I worked in a variety of sales and marketing roles, including working directly for IBM chairman and CEO at the time, Lou Gerstner. So that really gave me a broad brush view of the industry before I got focused in working on different technology companies.
And when did you start specifically getting on the alliances and strategic partnership side of the business?
Well, I got very involved as the head of sales at Guidewire because of our execution strategy was to work closely with consulting SI firms there. And then when I was at CSC, that's even though CSC has some intellectual property, in many ways, very much a consulting company and a services delivery company and a kind of a custom solution application build company. So I got to see the other side of it there as well. And then as I was doing some consulting within the industry and got to know the Limelight people a little bit, I really felt like this was a differentiating strategy that would work well for them, like for most technology companies. So I was willing to come on board and help them build and execute this approach.
Great. And for our listeners who aren't familiar with Limelight Health, give us just a quick recap on what Limelight Health is, who it serves, and what it does in the marketplace.
We provide a SaaS-based quoting, rating, and proposal system for health insurers. So help them do a good job of assessing the risk and quoting the risk and putting quality proposals in place to help their salespeople go bid on group health insurance. And it's an exciting area and one that's been underserved. So we're having some fun.
And can you mention any of the logos or clients that you're working with Limelight?
Well, one of the ones that's most exciting for us was Principal Financial Group that signed up with Limelight Health last year. And what we're excited about is not only did they do a POC with another company and maybe weren't very happy with it, they went with a POC, a proof of concept with Limelight and said, wow, this is great. And then they contracted, and upon starting to use the software said, wow, this software actually performs as you said it would. No overselling, no overhype in the sales process. And they even went so far as to invest in us. So we just did our Series C round of fundraising, and they just concluded late in 2018, and they were the lead in this round after having experienced some other companies and then us. So we were gratified to see that the quality of our solution, the quality of our people, quality of our approach manifested itself in a way that they actually chose to invest and take a spot on our board. So that's probably the hallmark experience that really kind of helped congeal everything for me as well, and that we're pretty excited about.
That's great. Well, congrats on the Series C. I read about that at the end of 2018, and I know it's pretty exciting for everybody. So, and I'm excited to see what Limelight continues to do in this space. So today we're talking about partnering with consulting SI firms. Pete, can you give our listeners, maybe the uninitiated, just briefly name some of these consulting SI firms so we can put a face to the name here, and also kind of what they do specifically as it relates to what you guys do at Limelight?
Well, there are big national consulting system integration firms like PwC and E&Y, Capgemini, Accenture. You've heard the names of those big firms. There's also a series of boutique firms that have specialties either by application area or by technology stack or by region of the country. But these firms are really, what they do is they typically don't major in having their own intellectual property. They major in delivering solutions and providing value to clients. Since we serve the insurance space, most large insurers have at least a relationship with one of these big consulting SI firms, if not multiple, that they rely on when they make a strategic decision and then want to successfully deliver a project to help them. A lot of these large companies look at themselves and feel like they're dysfunctional or else aren't skilled at delivering large projects on time, on budget. And, large projects can meander for a variety of reasons. So they typically like to have a partner that assists them, that has project management skills and resources and that can scale. And wherever their locations are at, these consulting SI firms are used to providing people in those geographies. And they rely on these companies. These companies come in and deliver the solutions for them. So I feel like those companies are just a tremendous avenue if you can partner well with them. It isn't easy to do, but if you can partner with them well, they can go deliver the solution for you successfully and help your reputation in the marketplace significantly.
Yeah. So let's say I'm running sales at a tech company, and maybe we've dabbled in strategic partnerships, or maybe we have some great strategic partners, more maybe on a certain channel, let's say, that we've been developing, but we end up getting bogged down doing services delivery, which we're seeing great revenue from. I know you have opinions on this. Tell me why, as a tech company that was founded to build great software, we shouldn't be delivering these services ourselves, and we should maybe be thinking about partnering with these consulting SI firms.
Well, many times what happens with these early stage technology companies is they are visionary, they have great product leadership, and they go from 0 to 50 really quickly in terms of putting a prototype together and a product, and they get out there and they're able to sell, a couple anecdotally, and it really is a nice, exciting start for them. The problem is, once they start selling it more than once, they get bogged down with services delivery. When I say services delivery, the customer is located in a variety of different locations, and suddenly you have to post the job for services execution. You've got to recruit the people, you've got to hire them, you've got to onboard them, you've got to retain them. And what happens is a couple of these projects are hard, and there's invariably times when it's tough to manage what's going on at that point in time in the project. There's always bumps in the road, and you end up as a management team now. You're more focused on services execution, project delivery, than you are on the core critical strength that differentiates you and that got you in existence in the first place, which is rapid software development and industry leadership, and the kind of visionary leadership that the customer signed up for. The customer didn't sign up because you said, we're great at leading projects. They signed up because you have something special and unique for them. So they sign up with you, and then your company gets lost in the execution of services and project delivery. So that's why a company like Deloitte, who has great relationships with a lot of companies, a lot of large insurers, that's why you're better off to use someone like them or the previous mentioned companies to go let them spin up some resources on your product and then go deploy the project for you as your partner, and you stay focused on staying visionary, developing software. What is your roadmap? Meeting those roadmap dates and staying ahead of the marketplace requirements. But too often, Dennis, to summarize, that these software companies are very innovative, they're very entrepreneurial, and they get bogged down in services execution and all the items that I mentioned, trying to deliver projects at these large companies.
And why do you think that is? Do you think it's revenue is kind of the first driver of that, or an inability to let go? They're, if I hand it off to somebody else, they're just going to screw it up, or the client's expectation isn't necessarily aligned? What are the obstacles for a tech company that should be doing this? What's keeping them from doing it?
Well, first of all, it's the revenue piece of it. Many times, the way you pay the bills is these projects, you're building out your product with the customer, and you're implementing that, and they're writing you out big checks, and that's paying the bills, and it's hard to get away from that. I will tell you that when I was at Guidewire Software, Guidewire decided that they were going to let key consulting firms that had spent the time to get people trained, and they had to have certified, the correct number of certified people, but they let them take over and get the bulk of the services revenue. And now Guidewire required that we have 2 to 4 people on every project. We weren't going to totally turn our back, so we were going to keep a finger on the pulse of what was going on with the client. It was still considered a Guidewire project, so to speak. But by letting the EY, PwC, Capgemini of the world have the bulk of the services revenue and never reneging on that. So the problem is a lot of companies have this idea, but what they do is when revenue gets tight, then they go to the customer and they lean into it and they take the services revenue. And so if you're a consulting system integration firm and you've trained up a bunch of resources and you've got them now in a practice dedicated to that technology firm, and you find out that now you're competing with that technology firm for services work, that's the norm. That's what usually happens. You have to stay loyal to the strategy, and it's hard because of the ebbs and flows and how lumpy license revenue is. So you have to have a board that supports you. You have to be able to raise money from investors that understand this is your model, and then you have to stay true to it. But if you do that, you will build loyalty with these consulting SI firms, and they've got many more people, very trusted relationships with big companies, particularly in the insurance industry, and thus they're able to get you to midfield. As a sales rep, the hardest part of the job typically as a sales rep is knocking on doors and trying to get somebody meaningful to meet with you. And sometimes you start anywhere with who will meet with you, and then you try to work your way up the ladder. You can't believe how exciting it is when you have a partnership with these firms, be it Deloitte or E&Y or whoever, and suddenly they're introducing you into meaningful executives that have a business problem that they need to have solved that you can solve. And your initial meeting, you're at midfield, so to speak, and it's just much more productive use of your time, and it's a much better proposition when you're trying to scale your company than all the ergs of energy that are spent trying to knock on doors and get yourself into your targeted prospects.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you can get further down the funnel with these huge enterprise companies that are in some cases maybe on your dream list as a founder, and certainly the board, they're supporting you in that and allowing you to take this route, it makes a lot of sense. But how do you convince, whether it be a board or other leadership, when you're a nimble software company, started maybe kind of scrappy and have built yourself up, and maybe you're growing really fast now, when you look at some of the names you mentioned, some of the things that come to mind is that they're legacy companies, slower in process, don't think in the way that a fast-growing tech startup thinks. I know that you've said before that some of these consulting firms get a bad rap, and it's not quite fair. Can you shed some light on that and why these nimble, fast-growth startups don't need to worry so much about kind of some of the legacy obstacles in working with these consulting firms?
Sure. There were 2 parts to your question. One is, how do you convince your board and kind of your motivations? Well, first of all, the margins if you're a software company are much better than if you're a services delivery company. Secondly, your valuations as a company, when your majority of your revenue is via recurring license revenue versus software revenue, is so the excitement is there. If you can do it, if you can truly be a software licensed recurring revenue company, the upside is huge. But on the second part of your question the consulting SI firms have almost gotten a bad rap because people think all they want to do is put 25 people in the project for 3 years. and bloat and inflate and elongate the project. And they've because they've been involved in projects in the past that maybe were more aligned like this. As a software company, you say, listen, I want to get this implemented fast, and I want a winning value proposition that shows that I got ROI within a year or something fast. And your first thought is these consulting SI firms are counter to that. They want to have big, huge projects, but the world has changed. The SIs are under tremendous pressure to bring new ideas and quick ROIs and transformative new technologies forward. And they're pretty much being stiff-armed when they come forward with the large multi-year projects of yesteryear. So I found that they've got a tremendous appetite now. Matter of fact, many of them have divisions now that are out there kind of trolling the insurtech companies, trying to see what might be the next big thing so they can jump on board early.
Interesting.
And so their receptivity is better. And it's because the marketplace has changed towards this quick ROI model. And so now they know if they can go do numerous projects with a quick ROI, that's their path to good fortune going forward. But also that impresses the client that way. And when this project's over, the client's more inclined then to engage them on other transformation initiatives.
Yeah. So you think it's fair to say that some of these consulting firms are actually even hungry for this type of business and are obviously much more receptive then to just having the conversation with someone like you or other folks that are running alliances and partnerships at tech companies?
Yes, hungrier than I've ever seen them. The receptivity is great. So I know people at all these different firms, but we're getting great responsiveness from our initial contacts with them. And then you look at our pipeline that we have at Limelight Health, and half the opportunities that we're working on now are opportunities that have already been brought to us by consulting SI firms that we've had initial meetings with. And the pressure's on them so much. One of these firms, we just had an initial introductory phone call with them. They called to find out who we were. And the following week, they were introducing us to the CEO of a large insurance company where they had just been in a strategy session where the CEO brought up this particular problem as their number one priority and something we could solve. And they were happy to have had the introductory call with us. But right away, there we were with an introduction into the C-suite for a qualified opportunity. So I think that's why I'm here is to do this. I think companies should spend the time to have somebody that knows how to do this and focus on doing this. And it's a path to much quicker scalability and staying in your sweet spot of that which you know how to do well.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. I do want to wrap up here, but would you, without giving away any secrets, obviously, and what Limelight's doing, would you share just a little bit about the business side of this? Maybe, how long is a typical sales cycle from the time you start talking to the kind of first integration? Maybe even review just a couple of key deal points to look out for. Would you be willing to share some of that?
Sure. If you're going it yourself and you're selling to a large insurer, any kind of large company, the sales cycle is typically a year from when you're able to wedge your way in there and get started with somebody. And that can vary a little bit one way or another based on budget cycles and what time of year it is, but typically it's a year. If you can be in a situation where you've got, and then by the way, you've also got to have enough people on your team to go spend the ergs of energy to get into enough penetration for your target customer list. So if you say, listen, we want to get 6 deals done this year and it's among this list of 50 prospects, you've probably got to have a half dozen salespeople to go figure out how to go get that done. If you've got a partnership strategy and you've got a consulting SI partner or two, I'm not saying you go try to connect and do this with everybody, but you go find a couple that are most receptive, that have a good presence in your particular industry space, and you get them knowledgeable and trained and understanding your value proposition, and you send them out and talk to their clients. What will happen is they will come back to you with, here's the interested people. They aren't going to come back to you with everybody. Some customers are just going to say, not the right timing, we got other things going on, not a priority for us. That's fine. They're pre-qualifying it. And these consulting SI firms are great at pre-qualifying. They've learned long ago, you don't want to spend time on things that the customer isn't going to have any budget to focus on. So when they come to you with an opportunity, typically it cuts the sales cycle in half. It's basically 6 months versus a year.
Wow.
Because you're already in at some meaningful decision maker level who's got budget. So then it's a matter of just working through their bureaucracy and through their decision process and then the contracting process.
And about how long does it take to set up one of these consulting arrangements with the not with the end user client themselves, but with the actual consulting SI firm?
Well, the trickiest part is just calendar coordination, because most of them now have people that are looking for the early stage technology companies that they can partner with. So it used to be difficult to find anybody who cared. Now they've all got people that are out there looking, watching, listening, paying attention to what's going on, attending conferences. Some of them are even attending, VC meetings to try to kind of get visibility to some of these early deals. So that's the first part of it. Is they're receptive. So getting an initial contact, initial phone call, an initial set of emails going, that's pretty quick. The part that takes a few weeks is just the part that they're going to say, okay, now this is interesting enough. I want to get a couple of my key partners that really know this space on the phone with you. Maybe do a GoToMeeting or WebEx or Zoom or BlueJeans, some kind of a presentation where we see your value prop and we see a little bit of your technology stack and maybe a quick demo. And that takes a little bit of time because these people are busy, and 2-3 weeks to set that up. But then once you get through that, then you're off and going.
That's great. Well, I think this is really valuable for anyone running sales at a tech company, anyone either kind of currently involved in certain channels and partnerships, or thinking about how they can move up to somewhere where these more enterprise clients. Pete, if people want to get more information on who you are, what you do, or on Limelight Health, what's the best way to get in touch?
They could drop me an email at peter.espinosa@limelighthealth.com, and I'm happy to respond or help anybody out there. They can also find me on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Well, Pete, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Dennis, I enjoyed it very much. Appreciate it.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.